So today is a very big day and marks 1 whole year since I uploaded my very first video on this little Bible study project. And here I am, back where I did the first video. Slightly alarmingly, at this point I've only got through 8 books out of 66. I'm on page 290 out of 1,251 pages. So it stands to reason it's likely there's going to have to be more anniversary videos at some point. I wasn't going to bother making an anniversary video because, well, who cares? But this whole thing is supposed to be a journey, and the one question I've been asked most, by at least 4 people, no less, is where is my head at after 12 months of studying the Bible? It's sort of asked with a slightly suspicious tone, almost like if you sit down and read the Bible, is there a risk you're going to turn into a rip-roaring born-again Christian? But an anniversary makes a good point at which to sort of look back and take stock, I suppose, as it were, on what I've learnt so far and what I think about it. I started with the intention to only read the Bible because I didn't want to read other things and be swayed by other people's views on it. But I became so engrossed in the subject that at this point I've read 19 books on the subject and I have 4 more still on the go. So I have cheated a little bit, albeit I have read very much on both sides of the argument. There's no bias in what I've been reading. I should probably declare that I don't sit on my bum reading books all day. I just spend an alarming amount of time on my own in my car. So most of those books I've taken in through audiobook, but then I buy the actual book so I can go back and look at the bits that are of particular interest. Initially, it's probably fair to say that thus far at least, the Old Testament isn't the sort of thing that's likely to convince anyone, I don't think. It's not like you pick up the book of Genesis, read about a talking snake and go, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So my feeling is that thus far, there may well be a thread of historical accuracy running through it, but it seems more like an embellished epic that's very, very good, conveying some really big ideas rather than actual literal truths. Therefore, the most I could say for it at this point is that if God does exist, then the Old Testament would be very befitting of that in terms of grand epic scale, and it's so clever. But at this point, it doesn't seem to offer anything in terms of actual evidence that it's true. In terms of my other reading, there's some stuff there that does have some really interesting stuff that could suggest that some of it may be true, for the stuff that comes later on. As an example, Jesus, for example, is generally agreed to have existed and to have been crucified. There's plenty of works that document that outside the Bible, so you don't even need the Bible to know that Jesus was real and he was crucified. The interesting part, though, comes when you factor in that a bunch of people think they saw him alive and then went and lived lives in a certain way that didn't sound very nice, and a lot of them ended up dying horribly for it. I appreciate in that there's the obvious objection that people think they've seen Elvis Presley alive and well, for example. But no one has died for their belief in Elvis Presley. I assume not. That'd be a really silly thing to do. I appreciate, obviously, also those of a blowing stuff up type mentality who have died for their belief in God. But the point is that the disciples of Jesus thought he died, then claimed that they saw him alive, and then went on to live these terrible lives and end up getting killed. And some of them really horribly as well, I gather. There's still more to be read on that. But it seems like a key difference that they were in a position to know it wasn't true. So if Jesus was killed, if the resurrection wasn't real, then it makes no sense for them to go on because they would have known it wasn't real. And that makes them, I believe, unique in the whole of history. You just wouldn't die for something you knew to be false. So there's a lot more reading to do on that, in the sense that I need to figure out, is it true that they really did have terrible lives and then were killed horribly for their belief? But I will come back and I'll do a tangent video on that when I'm ready. But at this point, certainly that is the most compelling part for me. And that makes, in turn, the Old Testament, makes me take it a little more seriously than I otherwise might have done, because it might be relevant. Whether or not it's literally true probably still doesn't matter, maybe. But it would at least be important context in what comes in 1,000 years' time. So in that respect, certainly my agnosticism is unchanged, or at least maybe I was 90% not true, 10% true a year ago, and maybe I'm now 70% not true, 30% maybe true. So I have definitely shifted, but there are still some really big, difficult questions to answer. This does therefore remain a deeply sceptical journey, but I am impressed with, in the first year, how Christianity deals with seeming relative ease with pretty much any objection you can throw at it. On that, I should say I remain committed to not trampling on anybody's faith, but I also remain committed to throwing these really difficult questions at it. Before I struck upon the idea to start the least successful YouTube channel in the whole of the internet, I thought about just going to an alpha course that the church runs and asking questions there. But it occurred that, given I don't want to shake anyone's faith, I know a lot of people there are perhaps fledgling in their faith and they're going to find out more answers. And then this guy comes in asking all sorts of questions and questioning the validity of Bible passages that underpin the existence of the Trinity, that sort of thing. And I'm sure some Christians can handle that, but others maybe not so much. And I just didn't want to go trampling all over that. Granted, if they watch this, it's going to ruin it anyway, but they don't have to watch this, it's fine. In that respect, I don't get why the atheists are out there trying to, or some atheists are out there trying to preach their message, because it's preaching the absence of something, like trying to take something away from someone. And basically it's none of their business if someone wants to believe in this stuff. And then for my part, it's also none of my business, but I don't want to take it away from anyone, because I think it'd be fair to say that if more people lived by Christian values, actually lived by them, that is, not just saying one thing and going and doing another, then it seems reasonable to expect that the world might just be a little bit of a better place. It's consistently difficult to keep an open mind on it, because you read something and you just go, well, that's clearly not true, because snakes don't talk and donkeys don't talk and all the rest of it. But the whole point of this is that you've got to keep in mind that, okay, it could be true. So, the story of Genesis may literally be true. I don't feel like it is, but I think it's important to keep the approach as keeping in mind that it could be. And I do find it quite difficult not just to default to my usual setting of, okay, ghosts don't exist, donkeys don't talk. And the slight niggle I have been one of my sort of objections, I suppose, not really an objection, but one of my concerns on it, I suppose, is that the search for spiritual meaning might just be human beings being a bit neurotic. That's not calling anyone neurotic, that's just where I'm at in terms of one of my things. Well, it can see why people might want it to be true, but that doesn't make it true. So it would be a dodgy thing to rely on as a basis for faith. On the other hand, you can very much see where a lot of this stuff comes from. Even as a friend to Christianity, I can imagine a situation where I get run over by a bus or something stupid. I go up to the gates of heaven, still as a non-Christian, and I get there and I meet St. Peter. Holy crap, it was actually true. Well, I've lived a really good life, and so I can come in, yeah? Ah, no. You were on a sceptical journey and you didn't believe. You chose a life cut off from God, and that's what you get now. Besides which, there are no irons in heaven, as you can possibly tell. You're downstairs, second door on the left. What? That's not fair. I read it all, I thought about it, it just wasn't any evidence for it being true. You exist, don't you? Did you really think the entire universe just popped into being out of nothing? Well, yeah. And you're self-aware. By your reckoning, you're just a big pile of atoms, and you think big piles of atoms have consciousness? Yeah. You've seen Arnold Schwarzenegger and read Stephen Hawking. You really thought they evolved from dirt? Yeah, that's what Richard Dawkins said. How was I supposed to know any different? We sent you a guidebook. It's the most common book on the entire earth. It tells you all about all of this stuff. Yeah, sure, I read it. But it sounds made up. It's got talking snakes and donkeys in it. Yeah, sure, a lot of the detail is metaphorical. That's why we put a talking snake in it, to make that obvious. But in the context of all the other stuff I just said, if you'd really sat down and really thought about it, you seriously telling me you couldn't pull out the meaning through any of that? Obviously, I'm being silly with that exchange, but at this 1 year point, there's no getting away from the fact that there's nothing ridiculous in that exchange. And as Graham Oppy says, it's not unreasonable for people to be theists. Anyway, we shall soldier on for at least another year. I suspect it'll be a few more years. But it has been great fun sharing this with everybody and all 34 subscribers, and average about 9 views per video. But it's 74 videos and 3,000 watch hours. Fortunately, it was never my objective to be a proper YouTuber or anything. And I remain very sorry for the first 30 or so videos. It is a very startling thing to sit you down, put a camera in your own face and start talking about something you know nothing about. But I am grateful to those who participate in this. It has made it good fun, and I remain quietly confident, I think, that we can figure out the answers. I haven't got a cake because that just seemed a little bit excessive by myself, but a packet of biscuits seems like fair game.